It wasn't until Callie Corey that I got to work with a woman director. I had sent her the book. Divine Secrets of the Ya-Ya Sisterhood was a book that was on the bestseller list for 120 weeks. It was read by every woman in the country, and yet it was turned down by every studio in town.
Welcome to another episode of the Filmosophers Movie Talk Show. I'm Chris Bush.
And I'm Dean Slider.
On the Filmosophers, we talk about film and filmosophy with the people in front of and behind the camera, people who love the movies. And we are really thrilled to have as our guest on the show today, Bonnie Bruckheimer, who's been a film and television producer for many years, partnering with Bette Midler from 1985 to 2002 with All Girl Productions. And among her best-known films include Beaches, Hocus Pocus, Divine Secrets of the Ya-Ya Sisterhood. In 2011, Bonnie began teaching the Women in Industry and Career Choices and Challenges course at USC School of Cinematic Arts. She is also a philanthropic angel with work in women's cancer research, animal rescue, and grief counseling. So welcome, Bonnie.
Thank you. I'm very happy to be here.
Thanks. So we're going to, as part of our format, talk a little bit about some of your favorite films later in the show. But we'd love to just hear first about some of your film work and any fun stories about your experience in that world and the people you worked with. Share with us just what comes to mind there.
Okay, well, what came to mind when you said that you wanted to talk about films I work with is that I am more interested in rather than hearing in 1982 I did this and things that happened to me along the way. And I'm going to tell some stories out of school, but everybody I work with is kind of dead now, so I don't think I'm going to. I'm not going to have any. I'm not going to have any people calling me up and say, how dare you say that? I only have wonderful things to say because I was blessed for many, many years working incredible people. From Arthur Penn, one of the first movies I did, Arthur Penn directed that movie. And to Gary Marshall, who did Beaches with me, and Callie Corey, her first directorial effort with me for Divine Secrets of the Ya-Ya Sisterhood. So I've been very, very blessed, but it also was a rocky road because I was in a boys club and I wasn't a boy and Bette wasn't a boy, and Margaret South, who was our partner when we started our company, we kind of called our company All Girl Productions, tongue in cheek, because women were not supposed to be called girls. And I still, with my students, say you girls, and then I apologize because we're not supposed to call. We're girls. As long as people are calling us girls, I'm very, very happy to be a girl. And I know that it's much more of a feminist gesture to say women, but I'm old fashioned, and we called our company All Girls, and our motto was "We hold a grudge." And we laughed about that for a long time. But I have learned since to never hold grudges, because the only one that it hurts is yourself and not the person you're holding a grudge against. So as far as being a film producer, I never, ever thought that I would do anything like that in my life. I went right to work at 18 years old, right out of high school. I never went to college. And I had jobs as secretaries, assistants, this and that. And I did not ever believe that I could do anything like produce movies. And the fact that I did and have for a long time was always something that I pinched myself. I never took for granted. I never was anything but grateful. And it was very, very hard work, but I loved every minute of it. And I will just say that the reason that I stopped doing it after Divine Secrets of the Ya-Ya Sisterhood was because I worked on studio films, and we had deals at studios, at Disney, at Universal, and eventually at Columbia. And so I only did studio movies. And when we closed our company and studio movies were not making the kind of movies that I did, like beaches and women's movies, the only thing that was available to me was the independent film world. And that was something that I gave it a little bit of a try, but basically in my mind, it was all about raising money. And I raised money for women's cancers, and I raised money for pet adoptions, but I did not enjoy it. It wasn't what I wanted to do. People came to me saying, we've got the money, we're going to use your name. Basically, they wanted to use my name to go get the money. And once I mean, this was a long time ago. This was 18 years ago. So once I learned that that was what the drill was, I just said, I'm not going to end a successful career with waiting 6 years to get money for a movie that might not get made. So people ask me all the time, well, you know, why did you stop being a film producer? I stopped because the business changed. And as I said, I didn't have a deal at a studio. They weren't making those kind of movies. And that's the reason. But during all the time that I did it, it was amazing. And even though it was a boys' club and we had to fight our way for everything we did, we had to fight our way. I mean, we were women, and Jeffrey Katzenberg treated us with a lot of respect because Jeffrey Katzenberg hired a lot of women at Disney. He knew that we were hard workers, and he knew that he could get us for less money. And so he always had our back, and he always treated us with great respect. And, you know, I was one of the 500 calls that he made every single day, and talked about everything that I was doing with him. But the rest tried to beat us down about everything. And we had a fight, and we learned to stand up for ourselves, and it was a great experience.
Why do you feel that was? Why did so many of the boys in the boys' club feel it necessary to beat the girls down?
I'm sorry, but are you two men? This is the world we live in. It continues. We have to fight for everything. We are not given the same respect, or, you know, oh, let us take care of this. We'll take care of this. That's the way it goes. That's the way it has gone.
Oh, yeah, no, and of course, I'm not questioning that happens. I'm trying to dig a little deeper. Why does this keep happening, not only in your field, but in so many fields?
Because we have 51% of the country are women, and yet 2% of the movies that are made are directed by women. I mean, this continues. It never ends. It's brutal. I want to talk to you on a positive note. I mean, a very positive note. I teach 25 women every year, only in the fall. And I am saying to them, you can be whatever you want to be, because I believe that. And I know they're going to work very, very hard to get to do what they want. But when you see the statistics, and you see the way it is, that no matter what happens, I mean, when Wonder Woman was made, wow, a woman is directing an action movie that made $100 million. This changes everything. No, it didn't change anything. It didn't change anything. So why do I think that happened? I didn't even try to think about it. I was happy to be in the room. I was happy to be in the room where it happened, with the guys, with the studio people, everyone. I was happy to be in the room. I brought my own rules. I had a baby boy, and I brought him to meetings and sat him on the table, because I wasn't going to be, work 12, 15 hours a day and not see my son that I waited a long time for. And they respected me for a lot of those things. They didn't give me a hard time for that. But as far as making judgments, we had to fight for everything. And I'll give you an example. Mark Rydell, who I never tell these stories in school, because they don't know the students don't know any of the people I work with. They seriously, not Arthur Penn, Bonnie and Clyde. They definitely not Mark Rydell, a great director. But I'll give you a story. So I was introduced to basically Bette Midler and that whole group by Mark Rydell. He was a friend of mine because I worked with Bob Sherman, who was his partner in a movie company that they had. And he did The Rose and did a brilliant job. Bette was nominated for her first Academy Award during that amazing film that he directed with her. Years later, we had a project called For the Boys, and we were looking for a director for it. And we wanted to ask Mark Rydell to do it. And so I'm going to shorten the story and just say, we went to Mark Rydell, we gave him the script. He agreed to direct the movie for us. I was a producer, Bette Midler was a producer, and Margaret South. The three of us were all girl. Mark Rydell always had a producing credit on movies that he did, but he was not a producer on our movie. There were the three of us, and we hired a great line producer who got an executive producer credit. One day I called Mark up and he said he was having a meeting with the DP, and I said, well, I'm not there. And he said, well, my office is in West LA and you're at Disney. And I said, please don't have that meeting without me. I'm the producer of this movie. And I knew that I had to fight for my job. I knew that Mark Rydell thought, thanks, girls, I'm here. And nothing against that. That's what he did. That's what most directors did. And I went home that night and I said, I'm not going to call Bette Midler and say, oh, you won't believe that Mark Rydell didn't invite me to this meeting. I didn't do that. But I worked up all the courage that I had. And the next morning I called him up and I said, Mark, I know that you know me from when I was an assistant at Warner Brothers. And I worked my ass off to get this job that I have now. And no one is going to take this job away from me. You are not going to do these meetings without me. I hired you. I hired you. Bette and Margaret and I hired you. And I'm going to produce this movie with you. And to his credit, he called me back later on. We're opening up an office in my, in my building where I have my offices, and that office is going to be for you, and you're going to come and be in every meeting that we have. That was something I had to fight for. He would have easily just said, thanks for the movie and go on with it. And so that's what I had to do.
So I'm curious to know how any perspective on the women like Sherry Lansing and Amy Pascal who've taken leadership roles at studios. Is that just were they sponsored? Were they advocated for? What?
They were brilliant. They were advocated for. Sherry certainly wasn't, since she was one of the first, and she had men who brought her up there and helped her. Amy was just an amazing go-getter, and I feel like she always had help. We all have help. I mean, who doesn't have a job with somebody sponsoring you or being your mentor? We all do. In the film business, it's mostly men. I had expected that the women would be more helpful and not competitive, but that didn't happen so much. And so,
did you experience competition and challenges from lady executives too, who just there was power issues, or there was gender politics there as well?
No, I had a lot of great experiences with women executives. I did, but I know that a lot of that is not always the case. That's not always the case, but I was very lucky. I worked with great women. Great. As a matter of fact, I worked with Susan Kartsonis on For the Boys. She was an executive at 20th Century Fox, and I just left my teaching at USC because I'm moving to New York, and she's doing my class next year.
Oh, nice.
So, yeah.
Bonnie, is there a different dynamic or a different chemistry when you're producing and working with a woman director versus a male director?
Well, I have to be honest, I didn't have the power to work with women directors when I started. I was, I didn't have the power. I couldn't say, I demand that I work with a woman director. I had to, I mean, I was very lucky because I got to work with great male directors, but it wasn't until Callie Corey that I got to work with a woman director. She had written, I had sent her the book. Divine Secrets of the Ya-Ya Sisterhood was a book that was on the bestseller list for 120 weeks. It was read by every woman in the country, and yet it was turned down by every studio in town. And the way you could go and submit it again is if you have another element attached to it. And so I got it set up at Warner Brothers, and I had sent Callie, and she turned down writing the script. But we eventually went back to her and said, well, would you write the script, rewrite the script if you can direct it? And since she had not directed anything, she had won an Academy Award for Thelma and Louise. This was her first directing. So that was my experience. And of course, it was an amazing experience. I mean, we worked with Ellen Burstyn and Sandra Bullock, Maggie Smith, had a great group of women. It was just a joy. It was an absolute joy. I could cry thinking about it because it was an absolute joy. It was amazing.
Yeah, that's an amazing roster of people. I just watched a couple of nights ago, The Lost Daughter, which I think is an extraordinary film. And it was interesting to me that Elena Ferrante would only sell the film rights to her book if it had a female director.
Well, that is wonderful, but that is not usually the case, because a writer, a book, everybody wants to get their movie made. And just like I wanted to get my first movies made, I was going to do that come hell or high water. And that was great that she did that. Absolutely. And it was a beautiful film, a tough film, a very tough film, especially if you're a woman, a very tough film.
Yeah. And first time out, Maggie Gyllenhaal directing, I thought it was just brilliant.
Yes, absolutely. I was very proud of her, and everybody attached to it.
A film like that, and being made under those circumstances with the stipulation of the woman director for what is such a woman-centric film, I like to think, or at least hope, that maybe, around the edges, things are starting to change. I mean, you were the first wave. You were the first wave to hit the beaches, and maybe for the second wave, it'll be a little bit easier.
I pray. I want to see it. I want to see it because there are so many talented women, and I don't want to stay on this subject because I am very, very positive, and I do believe it is changing and it will happen.
Well, if I could stay on the topic one more moment, I do have a question, because I was thinking about this in the field of casting direction. So many women, it seems like it's predominantly female. And I just like to hear if you have any perspective on that. I saw a wonderful documentary a few years ago about Marion Doherty, who was kind of a pioneering casting director, but so many, since, and it seems to be a field dominated by women. Do you have any perspective on that?
Well, I've worked with both, but I do, I do love working with women casting directors. I feel like there's a sensibility they have for people who come in the room that is important for me. I mean, having cast so many movies and knowing what it's like for people to come in and audition, and you audition people that their work, and they still have to come and audition. And I feel that women have a great sense of just making them feel comfortable, making them feel
I think that's probably right. Greater comfort, sensitivity. But how is it that they that in that field they haven't had to wrestle with the same big hill to climb, and the, you know, and the gender
Editors
policy.
as well, women editors as well.
That's true. There are a lot of female
And,
editors.
you know, a lot of female editors from the beginning. And my students at USC, one of our project, we have two projects, a midterm and a final, and the midterm is to pick someone who is an icon in the field that you want to go into. And so the ones who want to be editors have a great many women that they could talk about. And it's funny because this year, one of my students did the Marion Dougherty, having read about her. And she was the woman that was the subject of her midterm exam.
Mm.
No, I'm married to an editor, a film
Oh,
editor.
you are? I didn't know that.
Yeah, and she
And it's a woman, by the way.
yeah, right. Thank you. Yeah, Yafa Lorea, she's a documentary editor, and of course, most of the directors and the DPs that she's worked with are men, and her, you know, she explains in kind of tribal terms: the men go out and shoot, the women stay home and weave.
Yes,
Good.
the women in cinematographers that I have taught in the last 10 years have faced so much adversity. I mean, from them saying that they can't carry the equipment. I mean, every reason in the book that they shouldn't be doing it.
A good friend of ours, we live here in Santa Monica, 2 blocks from Venice, and you know, half of our friends and neighbors are in the biz, and one of them is just one of the greatest documentary DPs in the business is Joan Churchill. And she's a good friend, and watching her work, you see the sensibility, and looking over my wife's shoulder when she's editing, I've sometimes seen that when the camera people in a real situation, they get what they need to get, and when they don't get it. And as my wife points out, it's because you have to not only look, you have to listen. You have to hear, you have to have this bigger sensibility of what's going on outside of the little camera frame that you're peering through. And watching Joan work, her stuff is just extraordinary. It's like anticipating almost the moment by half a second when I'm going to have to swing the camera over here. That kind of intuitive tuned inness is just, it's a joy to watch.
Great. Yeah.
Bonnie, will you share with us a little bit about the work you do teaching, and the you know, the kind of the issues that you deal with in your teaching work at USC? I'd love to hear.
Okay. I had a women's group in 2008 when the market crashed and a lot of people lost their jobs. A therapist and a friend of mine said, let's get a group together of women that kind of share what's going on in their lives. And it ended up being women a little bit older who may be aged out or lost their jobs or whatever. And we got together every other week and to talk about what we're going to do now. I called it, what are we going to do now? And the one thing that was very important to me was to say, I never want to be a person who say, I used to fly the Concorde to Paris. I used to do this. I used to do that. I want to talk about what I'm doing now. And I said, you know, unfortunately, some people's career ends and they don't have anything to talk about except the news. And so I said, let's hear what you think you can do. And I said, I would love to teach. And they encouraged me. Now, of course, saying I want to teach at college, having not gone to college, was, you know, a stretch. But I made up my mind that's what I wanted to do. And I was very, very lucky to meet the woman who was the head of the producing section of USC Film School and talk to her about the fact that I made women's films and I would love to teach a class about women in the industry, not a producing class, because they certainly have all kinds of great producers and producing teachers. But this class that I had heard about called Career Choices and Challenges for Women, which had been taught years before, had never been taught again. They stopped teaching it, and somehow I talked them into letting me teach it. And I've had a sold out class every year for 10 years, 25 with a waiting list. And I bring a lot of not stories. I don't tell stories about the business. I mean, I might tell a story such as how I got Divine Secrets to be made after it had been passed on at every studio, and saying to them, the most important thing that you can have is passion. I read that book. I had friends since I was 15 years old who are still my best friends. So that part of the story, I had a difficult mother, and a relationship in that book was about a mother-daughter relationship. I was passionate about it, and I made up my mind I was going to get that movie made, and I did. In school, I teach them that, especially in a business that is so competitive. I mean, it used to be, it was LA and New York that were film schools, you know, that now everyone in the country wants to be in the film business. Everybody, there's film classes in every single school. The competition is fierce. And I'm telling them, if they want to do this job, they have to feel like, I will die if I don't get to do this. That's what happened. You have to want it more than anything. And that's part of what I teach. And I also teach them, you know, at USC, you will learn your craft better than in any school. It's voted the best film school in the world every single year, and their craft is amazing. But there are a lot of things that they don't know once they graduate school. What am I going to do? And so that's what I teach them, and that's what they learn about what they're going to do. And there's nothing challenging. The only thing that's challenging is that we've had to teach on Zoom, and my class is certainly, we sit in a circle and we talk, and it's, you know, I'm not going to stand there and talk for 2 hours, 3 hours is the class. Everybody talks, and it's a very interactive class. So Zoom's been a challenge, but other than that, it's the greatest joy. It is one of the best experience I've ever had in my life, ever.
Teaching is addictive.
Totally addictive.
Yep.
I mean, I read an article of a woman wrote saying, you have no idea what teachers do. You have no idea how much work. I mean, teachers are not given credit, as we all know in this country, especially. And what you get out of it is so much more than you give. I mean, I have emails constantly from my students when they get a job or they have an opportunity, and they say, I remember you told me to do this, and you told me to. You just want to cry. You want to cry that you've made a difference. And for me, in women's lives, even though I've had many men in my class, I call them the brave men in my class, to teach them something that you know made a difference in their lives is one of the most rewarding things. And I tell my friends, my filmmaker friends, you know, I hope you have time one day to go and do it, because it's really, really wonderful. And I'm very blessed. And the only reason that I'm leaving USC is because I'm moving to New York, because my daughter has lived there for 8 years. And when COVID came, I didn't see my kids for a long time. And I said, I cannot live that way anymore. So I'm giving up everything and moving to the East Coast. I have the name Bruckheimer, as you know, and that's a famous name in the film business. And I have that name because when I was very young, I married a guy named Jerry Bruckheimer who wanted to be a film producer, but he was a producer of television commercials. And we lived in New York, and he was very successful at that one, and all those Clios and all those awards. And we were both young, and one day he had an opportunity to move to LA to be an associate producer on a movie. And he was going from a very lucrative career to making no money to be an associate producer. And I had gotten used to having all of that money. I worked as a secretary at Columbia Pictures in New York. And when he said he wanted to move to LA, I said, all right, easy come, easy go, let's go. And as you know, he became one of the most successful producers of all time in film and in television. And unfortunately, we were both very young. He was obsessed with being a producer. I wanted a party. I was in LA and I didn't have any ambition. And so we were kind of traveling in separate directions, and we're still friends. I had lunch with him before I left to come to New York, and people would say, oh, it must have helped you to have that name. Nobody knew who he was. When I kept that name, we got divorced 5 years later. I wasn't going to go back to my maiden name, Bonnie Fishman. I already had jobs with the name Bruckheimer, and nobody knew who he was. So it didn't help me at all. And so people always thought, oh, well, that's how she probably got to do it. No way. It had nothing to do with it. I worked very, very hard. I learned a lot about the business. I worked as a secretary at Columbia Pictures and at Gower Gulch in LA. When I had spare time, I would go sit talk to the old timers who'd worked there for 40 years. And those were stories that you really wanted to hear. And then basically when I met Bette Midler on the Rose, it is because of her that I got the opportunity to produce Beaches. I brought the project in. I have a friend who said to me one day, I know a woman named Iris Start. She's writing a book called Beaches, and she's written it with Bette Midler in mind to play the lead. And will you read the 12-page treatment of this book? And I read the 12-page treatment, and I was Bette Midler's assistant, who I met her on the Rose. And I read it, and if you can cry in 12 pages, you got something there. So after we had that treatment, we were able, with the help of Michael Eisner and Jeffrey Katzenberg, to make our first film at Disney, which was Beaches, which is now, as everyone knows, a cult movie, especially for women. And for the last 33 years, women I meet all over the world say that every year my best friend and I watch that movie. And it's our favorite movie. So you can imagine the joy of doing something like that.
Nice. Are you still close with Bette? Do you stay in touch?
Yes. Well, we had a kind of rough ending after 22 years. We did a TV series that I knew if it was not successful, it was going to be the end of our partnership. And for many, many reasons, it wasn't. And it was the end of our partnership, but not the end of our friendship.
Nice.
What was it like working with Bette? I mean, she's such an extraordinary talent on the screen.
Everywhere, in live shows as well. Everywhere, yes. It was amazing. I was a big fan of hers. Jerry and I used to go to her concerts in New York. I was a big fan of her. And when I got an opportunity to work on the Rose, and I met her, she didn't like me very much. She was mean to me. But we got over that after a while, and we became very close, and we became partners, and we made a lot of movies and television, and I worked on all her live shows that she did. I got credits on the HBO specials. I was nominated for a ACE Award, the last cable ACE Award. That's when they separated HBO and film and television. Television and HBO. And that was the last year, and we won for our special. So it was amazing. She is beloved by everyone who's seen her live shows, especially, but all her singing, her acting. It was amazing. I learned so much. I learned a great deal, even though I'm older than her. I learned a great deal from her. I learned I had a work ethic that I got from my dad. So, and my children now have it. And I had a work ethic, but I never understood if it's 11 o'clock at night, you don't quit until it's right. And she taught me that. She taught me a lot of things.
She's the pride of Ya-Ya, Hawaii.
Oh, that's for sure.
I lived in Hawaii for a number of years, and Ya-Ya is not a creative hotbed.
No, no. I mean, it practically doesn't even exist. There's a freeway where her house that she grew up in. Yeah, definitely.
So, Bonnie, let's talk about some of your favorite films, because that's something we love to hear from our guests, some of their favorite movies and what it is about them that make them favorites, and just in terms of making recommendations for our audience.
Well,
Films that they might
mean,
enjoy if they haven't seen them.
well, I started out with, I was trying to get it down to 19 films. And then I reread your email to me and you said, 4 or 5 films. So, I mean, I'm not making recommendations because I love so many films. I mean, I'm 77 years old. I've been watching films since I'm about 5. So I have a lot of films that I could recommend. I mean, my parents brought us to the movie theater in Brooklyn and sat us down. And then my mother would bring a tuna fish sandwich after about 3 hours. And then we'd stay there another 3 hours. So I've been watching movies since I was a little girl.
Okay, well, we can do another episode sometime to cover the early years.
Exactly. But the list that I wrote to you.
You mentioned, for instance, among the ones you mentioned, Monsoon Wedding, which is a 2001 Mira Nair film.
It was directed by a woman. It was an absolutely beautiful film. It was a subject that I knew nothing about. I mean, this is how I feel about my favorite films. If you are a filmmaker, it is very hard to watch a movie and not watch everything that's going on in the movie. You watch and you see extras who are walking back and forth, and all you could concentrate is over there. Why is the AD not watching the extras and making them look like they're waiting for you to say what, little things that bother you because you do this for hours and hours and hours, and you watch dailies and you watch every frame of a film. So my love of film became something that takes me away from being a filmmaker who's watching a movie. It takes me to another place. I sit down and I go in. I mean, Monsoon Wedding was one like that. Another one was like Water for Chocolate. I will never forget watching that movie. And I didn't know who I was after watching it. I just went into it. And that's the way I feel about the movies that I have said. I mean, I am a person who does not like violence. I am anti-violence. I am anti-war. I am pro-troops. I'm pro-military, but I hate war. And yet, like so many other people, The Godfathers, all of them are my favorite movies because they're brilliant. They're brilliantly written. They're brilliantly acted. And I could never say I won't watch them because
wait, now you just said all of them. Yes. I just want to probe you on this because my experience is the original Godfather is one of the greatest pictures, maybe the great American motion picture. Godfather 2 is not too shabby, but Godfather 3, God bless Francis, and God bless Sophia for taking that on. But
I know. But to me, to watch a new Godfather, I'm not going to say I said all of them because I was so thrilled that there was another Godfather not to watch. So I was very, very happy, like everybody. And I was very happy to have another one. So I'm putting it in the category.
Okay, good. That's fine.
Also on your list was Monster.
Yeah, you mentioned Patty Jenkins a little earlier for Wonder Woman. She had not directed a film for 14 years since having made Monster in 2003. Let's talk about that a little bit.
Well, I mean, part of every film that you love is the performances, and the performance of that movie was one of the most brilliant things I've seen, and a very difficult film to watch. I mean, I don't want to watch depressing movies, but watching a performance like that was just took my breath away.
Yeah, it transcends the material.
Absolutely. And I didn't want to put just women's films directed by women because for many, many years, I'd never seen a film that was directed by women.
Now, I have a question for you. Charlize Theron's performance in Monster was terrific, But a lot was made over the fact that this beautiful woman got uglified, and that made the performance more maybe noticeable or noteworthy. And I think the same happened when Nicole Kidman, she won her Oscar for playing Virginia Woolf with the fake nose.
Mhm.
And Elizabeth Taylor in Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf,
Right.
allowing herself to be plumper and grayer, and that
Yes.
was a big deal at the time.
And men have been doing that. I mean, look at Bobby De Niro when he gained 100 pounds.
60 pounds for
Whatever.
Jake LaMotta.
Yes.
Yeah.
I ran into him in a hotel lobby one day, and I saw this guy walking towards me. And I said, "Oh my God, that looks like Bob De Niro," and who I knew. And when I got there, I mean, yeah, men did that too. But when women did it, especially the most beautiful women, I mean, Charlize Theron, when you see her in person, you literally just stand there with your mouth open. You can't believe that anybody could be. And that's part of it. And it's okay. But a lot was made of it because there are a million critics and everybody has to have something to say about everything. I mean, I'm a member of the Academy, and when the new movies come out, if you ever saw on Facebook what people are saying about these movies, I want to cry. I feel like saying, have you ever even taken your iPhone and try to make a film? How dare you put down these directors? How dare you? That's what I want to say. I mean, you should get an Academy Award just from getting a movie made.
Now you make me feel bad for criticizing Godfather 3, because I know a lot of work went into it. I shouldn't be shooting spitballs from the sidelines. You're right. I've learned something today.
Well, I just think that people, you're anonymous, you get on the internet, you can say whatever you want, and the way they put them down, I just said, I could stop watching movies just from listening to all of the things that you had to say. I mean, there are flaws in everything, every film, and I don't know.
Let's visit one more and then we'll wrap up. You'd mentioned also Room, Lenny Abrahamson's 2015 film with Brie Larson.
Oh,
Tell us what about that just moved you or inspired you or affected you?
well, it's been a while since I saw that film, but this was a woman protecting her child. This was, it was something that was very, very dear to me, and I thought it was brilliantly done. I should have watched it again before we talked about it now, but I thought it was brilliantly done. I thought it was a very difficult film to watch, and then a happy ending. And who doesn't love a happy ending? A great ending. That was really important.
I loved the fact that the arc of the story was not the predictable arc, which is she and the kid are stuck in the room and then the cops come and they get freed and everyone is happily ever after. That's the conventional way to do it. But to have getting out of the room be much earlier in the arc, and then the real story becomes then how do you deal with life on the outside?
Yeah. And I love a surprise ending anyway. You're sitting and waiting for what you think is going to happen when it doesn't happen. And that's a joy to me to see that in a film.
I don't know the backstory of Brie Larson's, how she secured the role. I mean, she won the Academy Award for Best Actress for that. And I hadn't recalled her from, I mean, I might've noticed her in a film or two, but it really seemed like she came out of nowhere to, and did a beautiful job with the role. But I just be interested to know how she, how she emerged from the pack to get that.
Right. Very easy to find out.
Yeah, I guess so.
Anything you want to know, you can find out. Just go back and read about it.
What am I asking you for?
Yeah. Well, I do remember going, the Academy had a lot of lunches, and people who were up for awards were at all the lunches and told stories. And I do remember meeting her at those events when the film was nominated. And I think I voted for her. I remember voting for her. So that, of course, I felt that that was one of my favorites. And I had so many others,
Mm.
And I certainly miss making films, but I could not do the hours anymore. I
Yeah.
could not do the hours, and I am well aware of it. And I don't want to make a film and not be a real part of it.
You know, I think your filmography is a beautiful legacy. And I think it's really to your credit that, you know, you're not defined by that with your teaching work, your philanthropic work. You know, you're testament to how we continue to, you know, we define ourselves by the good we're giving the world in every capacity, you know?
Well, I also, you know, as I said, I am grateful every day, and I'm grateful that I got to do that. And I'm not, I mean, someone said to me one day, your name is Bonnie Bruckheimer. I said, yeah. And she said, there's a producer named Bonnie Bruckheimer. I said, yeah, that's me. And she said, how could you go from being a film producer to doing home staging? And I said, well, I'm good at it. I get paid for it. It's a competitive world that I'm proud of getting, you know, beating the competition. I'm very competitive. And I think we should be proud of any job that we have, that somebody wants to pay us and will keep us there. I mean, you can have a job, you know, any day you could get fired from your job. When people keep you on in your job, it's something to be proud of, and it's legal, and it's, you know, it's honest work. And so don't feel sorry for me that I'm doing something that I love to do. That's nothing is as wonderful as making movies, but I did it for a long time. And
I feel the same way about this show. Dean was a school teacher for many years. We've both been meditation teachers for decades. And Dean, I don't know if the Filmosophers, is it our third act or our fourth act or fifth act?
I've lost count. But I do believe it's an important life skill to, well, one important life skill is having the courage and the gumption that, you know, clearly, Bonnie, you're just an embodiment of that, to jump into a thing, to start a thing. But also there's a skill in knowing when it's time to move on.
Well, I was a grief counselor for 10 years. It was a volunteer grief job. I worked for a nonprofit, and I worked with teenagers who had a parent or parents die. And I did it for 10 years, and I became obsessed. If anybody told me that their friend had somebody die in their family, I'd say, well, have them call me. Obviously, I wasn't getting paid for it, but I felt like, well, I had to help them because someone died. And I realized after 10 years, I got to stop doing this. I can't do this. And I think that's important too, to just say, I've done this for this long, and maybe it's time for me. I never thought I would ever say no to doing anything again, but beautiful. I'm very, very lucky. I've done all of these things, and I'm a very, very happy woman.
Well, speaking of Dean, speaking of knowing when it's time to move on.
Okay. You don't have to use any of that. I'm just saying.
No, no, it's great. We're at about an hour. And Bonnie Bruckheimer, this has been just a delight. And you're a remarkable person who happens to be a woman.
Thank you. I think I am a remarkable person because I am a woman, and I truly believe that. And I have no offense. I know a lot of wonderful men in my life. I've married a few of them too, and love them, and I'm still friends with them. But I think that I feel like my femininity is a large part of who I am. And I'm grateful for it. Thank you so much for asking me.
Oh, thanks.
I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Bonnie. There's been delight, and thank you for sharing yourself with us and our audience. We're really grateful.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Great to see you guys.
Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you for joining us on the Filmosophers Movie Talk Show. Please subscribe to stay up to date on our newest episodes.